Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today to do a review and celebration of 2 years of the India Sandwich project and the India Sandwich platform. Um, like Sid said, it would be so great if you all could introduce yourself in the chat. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Ria. I'm an associate at Veditum, and I work on the India Sandwich project. I'm based in Goa. And I'm joined today by our other team members. There's Siddharth, whom you all know. There's Ishani, who's also an associate at Veditam, and Madhapa, who does all the amazing communications that you all have been, I hope, seeing in the last few months since he joined. So just to start us off, we thought we could also introduce Veditam and the work that we do. Um, as I'm sure a lot of you know, Veditam is a not-for-profit media and action-oriented organization, and we're working to really reimagine and transform the way environmental governance is done in India. And we do this by empowering people to take action and by creating empathetic environmental leaders for the future. Our work is interdisciplinary, and we situate a lot of our work at the intersection of environmental and social justice. Within Veditam, we have two flagship projects. One is the Moving Upstream project and fellowship, and the India Sandwich project and platform, which is what we're going to be talking about a lot more today. Besides these and within these projects, we do a lot of different activities and create a lot of different outputs. And we work a lot with partnerships and um, publishing, outreach, etc. And we'll talk a little bit more about the more specific outputs and activities we've undertaken under India Sandwich. But this is just to give you a broad idea of the sort of breadth of work that we do under Veditam. So we started our journey through under the Moving Upstream project by walking along India's rivers and documenting the lives and the lives along these rivers, and as well as some unavoidable things that you end up seeing when you're walking along these rivers are some pretty devastating threats that exist to these ecosystems. And the really prominent threat that showed up when we were walking these rivers and documenting the lives along them was that of sand mining, which is often unregulated, unsustainable, and extremely can be an extremely violent and environmentally damaging um, sector. And over the years, through this sort of interaction we've had with rivers, with river communities and river ecology, we have tried to build a deeper understanding of the sand mining landscape in India. This is a framework called the Sites of Violence that Siddharth had developed, and has been consistently added to over the years as our understanding of sand mining and this sector has developed, which tries to visualize the many sites of violence that exist within the sand mining sector, many of which tend to get invisibilized or left out when we talk about sand mining, whether it's in reporting or policy, etc. And we try to sort of use this framework as the basis of a lot of the intervention that we've done to ensure that the intervention, and we continue to do, to ensure that the interventions and actions that we take um, try the attempt is to really cover as much like a breadth or have like a more holistic intervention to sand mining that considers the many violences and threats and impacts that the industry has. And that's where India Sandwich came from. India Sandwich is at broadly an environmental accountability project that we started at Veditum. We'll talk a little bit more about how it was started, etc. But essentially, what we're trying to do is to enable the collection and archiving of data, and to then use this data to build collaborations and capacity for research, and for people to really be able to take action within the sand mining sector. At the heart of the India Sandwatch project is the India Sandwatch platform, um, which is an open data platform which serves as an archive of um, reports, documents, policies, etc. on sand mining. You can see that there are, so this is just a screenshot of the home page of the platform, and you can see that there's a bunch of different types of data that we archive on the platform, from news reports, tender documents, survey reports, etc., and very critically, mining observations, which are on-ground observations from partners, collaborators, and just citizens of sand mining that has been happening across the country. And these together really form a very critical body of evidence across time, across space of mining, of sand mining that has been happening in the country and on our rivers. And invite you all to check out the platform. We don't have time to maybe do a full walkthrough of it, but please go check out the platform, check out the data. In the last year, since its inception, actually, we have reached over 2,500 reports on the India Sandwatch platform, which you can see. In the last year, we've actually added over 90 rivers with sand mining reports on them, bringing us to over 700 rivers in the country with sand mining reports uh, that have been archived on Sandwatch. So like I mentioned, one big thing that we're doing is to collect and archive data. But the point really is to be able to then take this data and use it to build an understanding, to build stronger evidence of what is happening within sand mining, within the sand mining sector in India, and to also make this data accessible and usable to people like you, who can use it in research, can use it for legal action, for better reporting and journalism, for more informed policy, etc. And we've also been trying really to mainstream the conversation around sediments and build a better understanding of the role that sediments have in our rivers, to again ensure that sediment doesn't get left out in conversations when we're talking about river policy or river law or research around rivers, etc. Um, but let's talk a little bit about how we're trying to do this. So one way in which we've been sort of taking the platform to people has been through data sprints, where we bring together a group of people and we collectively search for and archive data on sand mining on the platform. These data sprints are a really fun experience. For those of you who haven't attended it, I really hope you get a chance to in the future, because they not just bring together people and help us build the platform and build data that then forms really useful evidence on sand mining, but it also introduces a lot of people much more intimately to the idea or to what we're trying to do at Sandwatch, and to the problem that sand mining, the threat that it poses to our rivers. And in the last year, we've done multiple data sprints on South India, focused on the east and the northeast parts of India, as well as a more focused data sprint on Madhya Pradesh. We also did a legal data sprint last year in Bhopal, because as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we archive on the platform are court documents, and we're trying to build those specific forms of data as well. One of the really cool things that's happened as a result of us doing data sprints is obviously that we've built this great archive, but also that we've inspired other people and other organizations to do similar data sprints, to collectively archive data on a variety of threats and problems that often have poor data archives. Um, yeah. Um, as part of our efforts to mainstream conversations around sediments and the role of sediments in rivers, we run a series of conversations called Sediment Stories, where we talk to some really incredible people who have very interesting insights on sediment, and they look at it through different lenses, whether they're ecologists or architects or archaeologists, different people with different lenses of looking at sediments. And in the last year, we've had 4 conversations, but that's just part of a much larger body of conversations that we've had as part of Sediment Stories. And we actually celebrated 1 year of Sediment Stories this year by doing a really nice recap of all of the conversations we've been having and sort of tying together a lot of the understanding that has been built using these different ways of looking at and understanding the role of sediment. And I really encourage you to check out our social media and the Sediment Stories page on Veditum. Sid has shared a link in the chat that will give you an idea of really the breadth of conversations we've been able to have about this very exciting topic. Yeah, one thing that's also come out of Sediment Stories has been writing about sediment. So, as part of a collaboration with India Water Portal, we have a series on the role of sediments in different aspects of landscapes and human lives, ecology, etc. And we've also had uh, other people, journalists, writing about sediments inspired by some of the talks that we've had on sediment stories. So please go check out some of the writing that's come out of Sediment Stories as well on India Water Portal. Um, yeah, and then obviously while we build all of these understandings, frameworks, and a lot of data, the idea really is to be able to take it to people, take the new imaginations and learnings and um, ideas that we have to as many people as possible. And we do this through a variety of ways, through talks, through workshops, even podcasts. And we try to make them as interactive as possible, as diverse as possible. And this is just a small snippet of some of the activities and outreach, the outreach activities we've done in the last year to sort of take the platform to people, to take our understanding and encourage people to use the data on the platform. And one big update that I will end with before handing it over to our partners to talk a little bit more about our work is that this year we were Veditum and the India Sandwich Project was given the action grant by the Habitats Trust. And we're going to be taking a lot of these efforts that we've been sort of fine-tuning over the last 2 years. We're going to be focusing these efforts on the state of Madhya Pradesh as part of a project to protect river habitats in Madhya Pradesh from destructive sand mining. And we're going to hear a little bit more in depth about that project later from Eshani. But for now, we're going to maybe start talking about what we've really been up to in the last year. And we're going to have our partners talk a little bit about what we've been doing, because really a lot of our work is only possible and strengthened so much by the incredible partners and collaborators that we work with. So we're going to start with really the people that we started with, which is Uloy Labs. And I'm going to invite Akshay from Uloy Labs to share a little bit about how we built the platform or how we've been constantly improving it over the last 2 years, but also how the efforts that we've been making to make it more user-friendly, but more importantly, more accessible to people. Akshay, you can share your screen.
Super. Yeah, before I share my screen, I'll just kind of quickly um, say hi. I am one of the co-founders of Uloy, and we've been building the open knowledge framework for the last 6 years. Last month, we made a small but big change. which was that we rebranded Open Knowledge Framework as DOTS. And this is actually in line with a larger shift for us, where we're going a little bit deeper into helping organizations do more with the analysis of the data that gets collected using platforms powered by DOTS. So in the first 5-ish years of our existence, we were very focused on helping organizations collect and organize their data. And this is what kind of was reflected on the India Sandwatch platform as well. And part of that last year was, uh, part of the idea was that we want to make the platform data more accessible. And so one of the big things that we announced last year and then subsequently released the feature around was CSV downloads of the data. And I think that's been a big part of making the open data platform more of an open data platform. This year, as part of accessibility efforts, I'm just going to share my screen. There's putting the cart before the horse. Anyways, part of the larger effort or around making the platform more accessible, in line also, with Veditum's push into working in MP and across a large part of the country, which is Hindi speaking, we are going to be introducing translated version of India Sandwatch. So right now the platform is largely in English. What you see on the screen is a test version of the platform, the staging platform. And very soon you'll have a Hindi translated version of the platform available. So I've got it open here. So essentially, the way that, at Dots, how we handle translation is at two levels. One is the user interface, and that is where we work with our partners to have a contextual, translation, so that, they can kind of make decisions on, how certain things get shown. So, right now, only parts of the platform have been done for this demonstration. So if you go to mining observations, it might crash because demo effect. Um, but the idea is that large parts of the interface are going to be available in Hindi uh, very soon. And um, why is this not working? Oh, it's in English. Sorry. Yeah, so you'll be able to access the platform in Hindi. And the idea is that the interface is in Hindi, but several things that are user generated content. So, for an example, the titles over here, or if I go into any of the data, then you'll see that a lot of the things are translated in Hindi, but any of the text written by users will still remain in English. So on the platform, we made a decision to only do the interface in Hindi, but not the user-generated content. And that's because that's where a lot of issues can happen because it's automated. And we wanted to make sure that we're able to retain the quality of that data and not lead to any wrong understanding or misunderstanding. So that's one of the first big announcements of what we'll be doing on the platform in the next few weeks. You'll have the whole platform available in Hindi. The second big thing is that as part of Dots, we've been building a lot of analysis features into the product, making that available to all our partners. And one of those things is response-wise analysis. So this is again a test platform. So some actual data, some test data, and the idea is, so this is the news reports data database. And the idea is that you will soon have a tab here that shows response wise, where you can then go in and see various kinds of visualizations that get set up automatically, that will keep updating as the information updates, as more data is added. Let me show you an example of what you might be able to do with this, right? So one of the fields that you enter in a news report is to say, what is this report about? So it's about incidents, it's about a routine action, it's about analysis, positive action by the government, so on and so forth, right? And the idea is that you can then apply a filter right here. I could apply a filter for, let's say, Madhya Pradesh, and it will tell me, what are the reports specifically in Madhya Pradesh. But then I want to do a breakdown that in those reports, I want to be able to see if any human deaths have been reported, right? And so then I can kind of do a breakdown and I can say that in the reports in Madhya Pradesh that are reported as an incident, 66% don't have deaths reported, 33% do. Routine action by government, only 8.5% have deaths reported, and so on and so forth. So you can kind of start using this data even if you are not um, able to download the CSVs, put it into a data visualization or analysis kind of stack. You can start doing some preliminary analysis on the platform itself. And so this is one of the analysis tools that's going to be available on India Sandwatch very soon. I hope this week, if all goes well. And this will be available on all the different data types that are there on the platform. I'll hand it back to the Veditum team to share another analysis type that we have that might take a little bit longer to reach you. But yeah.
Mm. Thank you, Akshay. This is very exciting. And I think, as you said, especially with the work that we're trying to do in Madhya Pradesh, making the platform accessible in Hindi does make the platform accessible to a lot more people. And we will talk about what we're doing in MP and a lot of stuff this week as well. But before we get there, like Akshay said, there's some more of the analytics bit that is coming to the India Sandwatch platform. And I've already created a view of this, but I can just go back to this collection. And there will be multiple types of reports that we will create and keep ready for users. But I've created a set of analytics from Madhya Pradesh based on the data on the platform, some visualizations of the data. And I prepared examples from news, mining observations, court cases, etc. And one of the things that Akshay just mentioned, like for example, on the platform, wait, I think this is not filtered. I'll have to filter it by state. Let me filter it to Madhya Pradesh. So now that it's filtered to Madhya Pradesh, what we're able to see is that of the roughly 300 news reports in Madhya Pradesh that are on the India Sandwatch platform, almost one-fifth are about the kind of heinous violence like deaths of people that have occurred. And it becomes very apparent when you look at it using a visualizer like this. Then people have reported mining activity in rivers of Madhya Pradesh. And what we're seeing is that for a few rivers, there's a lot more mining activity that is being done using machines. And a lot of this is illegal. So that's very clearly becoming visible. And in, for example, court cases, which rivers are the court cases about? And what's interesting is that a lot of the cases are about Narmada, which becomes apparent here. Whereas if you see on the right side, news reports from Madhya Pradesh actually have most amount of reports for the Chambal, whereas the cases are mostly about the Narmada. And that kind of a disparity becomes very clear for us when we look at data in this format. And then one has to ask, does the popularity of the Narmada make it something that is making the court cases happen more, as opposed to a river like Chambal, which is also popular in its own way, but maybe not as, does not capture popular imagination the way the Narmada does. And also, for example, district survey reports, which form the bedrock of sand mining activity, we can see that not always particular types of data is available that is supposed to be available in the reports. So very excited for these analytics to be made available to everyone to access and play around with. But in the initial days, it's going to be our team who's going to create some views of the analytics and make it available for you to see. And on demand also, we can make some of this happen. Um, Talking about visualizing data, one of the things that we have been doing for a while. Just give me 1 second. One of the things that we have been doing for a while is we've been talking about how the way we think about data in context of sand mining and the way India Sandwatch works. Data from India Sandwatch also becomes evidence in many cases. For example, this case where the thinking of the way we look at data in at India Sandwatch was used in a court case, which actually led to the stoppage of illegal mining activity on this river, which is the Yamuna. And that is something that excites us a lot. That this way of thinking that we have deployed at India Sandwatch and the imagination that it is pushing is very interesting because this kind of data had to be really explained in legal language by the lawyers and submitted in court. And interestingly, the court also admitted that evidence. So we're also looking at data as evidence. And I'll invite our next speakers, Ando from Berkeley School of Information, where the work we've done with them, and a lot of that work is their lead, is this data as evidence for one location. How does this become data as evidence for many locations? And I'll let Ando take the stage from here and sort of talk to us more about how we are creating evidence at scale together.
Thanks, Siddharth. It's going to be tough to follow that up. Really excited to see the dashboard and the analytics that's really coming to life. Just give me 1 second as I share my screen. Okay, somebody give me a thumbs up if they can see my screen. Should be up now.
Yes.
Thank you, Rhea. Okay, all right. So I'm going to talk about some of the work that our team at Berkeley, which is Suraj and myself, have been doing with India Sandwatch over the past couple of years, but mostly focusing on what we did in the last year and following up on Siddharth's comments around data as evidence. So what we're going to go over today is understand what's happening with our data set, which are labels and our ground truth, how we're doing the modeling, and then what sort of outcomes we're getting. So let me start at a little bit of a high level, like why are we doing this? What do we want to get out of this and so forth? So our goal starting out was to essentially find all the sand mining activity that's happening across India. As you can see in this satellite image here, like these are like very evident signs of sand mining in Betwa. But in order to do this, I think we have to answer a few basic questions, right? The first one is like, what is a mine? How do we like define a mine in this sort of satellite imagery? Then how do we go about finding it? And of course, when we need to find it, when and where do we look to actually get the outcomes that we care about, right? So I'll go over how we're doing this at sort of a high level, so everyone's on the same page, and then we can go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole. So when we started looking at satellite imagery for the kind of sand mining activity that we're interested in, we saw that there's actually quite a diverse set of visual features that we can see. And these insets you can see, like this one is on the Narmada. You see these like fingers of sort of sandbanks that have been gouged out, whereas this is like a completely different sort of signature that we see. And we've seen quite a huge range of what these things look like as visual signatures in satellite imagery. So in order to sort of understand and then be able to detect this, we wanted to get a good understanding of what's out there. And this is a great image of like the complications evident in trying to detect these things and the socio-political implications. This is an image that was taken by Tarun from WCT when we were out on a field trip on the Chambal. This is the Chambal National Sanctuary, and the reason this is a national sanctuary is part of the reason is that it's these cute little critters on the bottom right. They are the critically endangered Indian gharial. And as you can see, they've been kind of relegated to the edge of this giant sandbank. And we estimate this now mine to be about 25 hectares, which in the grand scheme of things is actually a very small sand mine. But this whole area used to be their sort of basking and mating grounds. But over here, if you look at the inset on the left, you see there's heavy machinery being used to sort of gouge out the sand, which is then transported out. And then if you follow, so this is in a very remote region, and if you follow the road out of this, you see that it goes past the local Gram Panchayat's office. So it tells us a lot about the inherent complications of this very illegal mine. Okay, so these are what you're seeing here, like time lapses from satellite imagery of two mining sites. One is just outside Cuttack in Orissa, the other is on the Narmada. And you see that these mines, they keep changing over time. The one in Cuttack is basically like it's kind of growing as these fingers of mines, they extend over the sandbanks, then we get the monsoon floods, they get wiped out and they have to start over again. So there's like these strong temporal dynamics, they keep changing over time, and they're not static. And so these are one of the important things that we have to sort of recognize to be able to detect these. And then previous work that Suraj and I had done to sort of detect construction grade sand, which is the primary reason the sand is being removed in the first place, led us to understand that we need a multispectral satellite imagery that is not just red, green, and blue, but also other bands such as near infrared, shortwave infrared, and also synthetic aperture radar, which helps us really separate flooded areas from non-flooded areas. And these are open access satellite imagery, Sentinel-2 and Sentinel-1, both by the European Space Agency. They're roughly available. Sentinel-2 is roughly available, let's say, twice a week. Sentinel-1 is like about once a week. So you get a new image, all of these at these sort of temporal frequencies. Now, the important thing to remember is that Sentinel-2 is kind of like their optical imagery, which means if there are clouds, you're not going to be able to see the ground. So this is important in the monsoon season, whereas synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, can penetrate through clouds. So it's very useful in the monsoon season. So our priors here was that these sort of satellite data sources could be very useful in detecting sand mining signatures. So how do we go about actually doing this? So the problem formulation that we have is that we can train machine learning models to recognize these mining signatures in these data sets that I just showed you. And so the first step in doing that is actually like, having a labeled data set that can be used to train such models. And the way we did this is, this is how our collaboration with India Sandwatch started, is the great data that the portal India Sandwatch has on the mining observations. They are point observations. So somebody has seen it happening, they've recorded an approximate lat long, so you get a single point. And so what we do from there is that we go and look at the very high resolution satellite imagery, and then we go and zoom in and essentially try to delineate the exact boundaries of the sand mine. Now, in these cases that you can see here, it's relatively easy to tell, where the sand mines are. And then in other cases, it's very hard to tell where the actual boundaries are. So there's a lot of complications involved, which I'm not going to go into today, but just keep this at the back of your mind that this is not a very straightforward process. And then what we do is we take as many observations as we could. We found the right satellite images. And in the sort of first version of our data set, we had about 100 of these observations. And an observation is an arbitrary size part of a river where we've seen some activity that has come from a human observation. And then we go and georeference it. So we started out with something like 1,100 of these georeferenced polygons, so we know exactly where in space they are. And then we set up a sort of task here. And a task is when we have, so we take this unit of observation, which is this sort of arbitrary part of the river. Then what you see here in these white hatched lines are the labels that we sort of handcrafted. And then what we do is to feed a machine learning model which can't deal with these random shapes. It has to be sort of squares or rectangles. We go and randomly sample these, right? So these yellow boxes are the samples, and they end up with positive samples where you have mines and also negative samples where you don't have mines. And we're essentially telling the model, hey, these sort of pixels here are mines, and they are related to where they are in space, relative to the other sandbanks, relative to the riverbank, where the water is, where the vegetation is, and so forth. So the model learns this over this entire data set. And then what we do is wherever we want to predict. So if you want to predict, say, across all of the jumble, we then basically extract the imagery across all of the jumble, and then we do this. We do a regular grid. So these red squares are these grids. We treat that, we send that into the model, and we're like, hey, does this entire grid of images, does it have mines or not? And where are the mines? And that's the question to ask. So that's sort of the setup. And then, so once we did this, we found that the models were doing okay. They were sometimes, giving us pretty good estimates. Sometimes they were not. So what you're seeing here in these images is these bright colors is where the model thinks there are mines. And so for here, for example, this is also on the jumble. This area is entirely rocks. And this area up here is mines. It's kind of hard to tell in these images, but it always thought that the rocks in the jumble are mines. So we had to disabuse the model of these ideas. So we had to do a lot of pruning and cleaning. I'm not going to go into the gory details, but essentially what we did was we took our data set that we trained the model on and asked it to predict on the same data set. It's already seen that. And then it's evident to us as humans, where it's doing well and where it's not. So for example, in this image A, it's doing really well in these regions. It's even found the little sandbank that's crossing the greater body of water. And in other cases, it doesn't do well. So we kind of, in some ways, reinforce the modeling strategies of the model by providing more examples of what it's doing badly and saying, hey, no, this is not a mine, and removing things that it's not supposed to be predicting well on. So for example, here, these are actual open pit coal mines that it picks up as sand mines because they really look alike. So we actually just remove that because, we don't, we were taking, if we just remove stuff that's not in the river boundary, you're not supposed to have coal mines on a riverbank. So we just remove that. And, all those things automatically help the model do better. And this is kind of the spatial distribution of where our sort of training data set is. So as you can tell, there's a lot in the Gangetic Basin. There's some down south, a little bit up north, almost nothing in the west and southwest. And these are sort of the biases that our data set had. These are where a lot of mining naturally occurs, where people have reported it. So these are sort of things to be careful about, right? We may not really do well when we try to predict out of sample here. So these are sort of caveats that we as machine learning people try to set up, saying it's probably not going to do well in West India, for example. Okay, and then what we do is, you don't have to read through all of the text here, but what we wanted to do is basically train a bunch of state-of-the-art vision models with this. And so there are some baselines. There are UNets and Dino V2 that act as pretty good baselines. And then we have a lot of satellite imagery specific state-of-the-art models that can deal with multispectral and SAR images, including a model that we ourselves developed called Panopticon. And what we find here is, okay, so I'll quickly explain what you're seeing here in this bar chart, is that, so if you remember those images that I showed you of multispectral and SAR, so I'll quickly go back and show this to you again, these images. So this comes, the top two come from one satellite, the bottom comes from a different satellite, and we call these different modalities because they are sort of sensing very, very different things. And so our prior was that, we want to teach the model the features from these very different modalities. So the SAR modality, which is radar, is this red bar here. The optical multispectral, including RGB, what our eyes would see, is the green bar. And whenever a model could deal with both of the modalities, which is not a lot of models, it's only these models here, it's the yellow bar. And basically what we see is that for some of the models, like these two models here, DOFA and Panopticon, they actually do better if you feed them both the modalities. And that's We didn't specifically test this, but basically, like when we want to detect mining in the monsoon season, your green bar is basically not available. There are no images from optical imagery available. It's only SAR. So you're going to be reliant on this. So you want this to work really well. And the numbers you're seeing here is for a metric called average precision, which we don't need to know the details about, but it basically means like, how well is this model doing? Is it balancing false positives with false negatives and so forth? And so it's generally a pretty good metric that tells us this model is not overestimating or underestimating in the regimes that we care about. And yeah, and then this number is basically for the mine pixels. Basically, what we have is in our data set, we have a lot of, images, pixels in the images that are not mines, and very few are actually mines. If you just look at all across India, for example, right? So we want to teach the model that, hey, it's actually very imbalanced data set, but you still want to do well for when there is a mine. So generally speaking, we've squeezed a lot of performance out of these models, and we're doing quite well. This is our version 2 data set, which we've kind of cleaned up. And this is an example of if we now take this model and then predict across an entire river. So this is the Chambal in the first quarter of 2025, the sort of vivid colors here where the model thinks there are mines. Okay. And so our next steps from here are we're going to work on the version 3, which is just including newer observations from India Sandwatch and from our own field observations that we also did with India Sandwatch in 2024, which will increase the training data set by like 20%. And then we're going to basically take the best performing model from there, predict across the Gangetic Basin on a quarterly basis, essentially from 2017 through 2025, and provide that on the India Sandwatch portal. And then we're also, as part of the research outputs, we are trying to understand what are the socioeconomic impacts, both actually socioeconomic and the environmental impacts of sand mining locally in those regions. So that's all from me. I'm happy to take a few questions if we have time, or we do this at the end. But thank you.
Thanks, Andu. I think we'll have to take questions at the end because of the way the session is structured. But thanks so much. Very excited about all the new possibilities that are getting opened up because of the work you guys are doing. And yeah, very excited.
Thanks, Siddharth.
Yes. So that's where we were. We just spoke to our friends from Berkeley on building tools for monitoring at scale and opening up of resources. And we talked about evidence at scale and looking at a lot of things and looking from the sky. What we also want to now do is introduce the work that we do with our partners at Wildlife Conservation Trust. And interestingly, through our partnership, new grant that Wildlife Conservation Trust has received, they'll talk about it. And we have our friends Nachi and Tarun from Wildlife Conservation Trust who've joined us, who will take the space from here. And they'll talk about this high resolution mapping, the more field observations from their field work, and long-standing efforts towards media workshops and strategies for local intervention. I think maybe Tarun will talk about that. So I'll hand it over to Nachi. And actually, one second. Spotlight you. Yeah, okay. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. And I'm again very glad to be here at the second anniversary. Apart from a 2-year review, it's also an anniversary. And really, I applaud India Sandwatch and feel that we are fortunate to be a part of it, even though a small part. But, I would also add here that when this knowledge partnership with India Sandwatch and Veditum started, we had quite a few ideas and we kept discussing with Sid and others. And, we are not only knowledge partners now as in at WCT, we are also students of India Sandwatch because of the impact that it has managed to create in such a short span of time. especially with respect to the litigation and the, the uptake of this sort of platform. I mean, we just heard about the technology and the dashboards that are now being developed, but even without those, just having things sorted and in one place, categorized, tagged properly, was such a, I mean, it was such a fantastic, it just opened up so many avenues for people to actually reach out to that one-stop shop for sand mining issues. And, that was quite an incredible thing. So what it also made us do was, while we were learning through this collaboration, we were also able to, rather it happened organically, I would say, that our own programs and projects also sort of kept India Sandwatch as a certain, as a beacon to how we did things better. So that is something I would definitely like to share. My colleague Tarun will, of course, speak about some of the specific work that we have been doing. But essentially, we work across the Gangetic Plains, also a little bit in central India. That is the non-Gangetic Plain part of central India. But in the Gangetic Plains, rivers like the Chambal, of course, for what it has still managed to protect and the threat it faces from sand mining, it is quite a, I mean, it's of course one of the, sentinel rivers for this threat. Apart from that, we also work across the Mahananda, the Son, the Ganga itself, the Ghagra, Gandak, and the Kosi in Bihar. And there are differences in not only the sort of sand mining that happens in different regions. It's intersected by the state. It's also governed by the kind of sediment that is available to mine, with the peninsular rivers being much worse off than the alluvial rivers because of the differences in replenishment rates and so on. So part of the work has been around how in regulated rivers by dams, how does an altered hydrology affect or rather promote sand mining, end up promoting sand mining on the one hand, but also with climate change, at least in the alluvial rivers, what we find is that opportunities for mining sand will also be mediated by, excessive flows now because of glacial melt in the dry season and during the flood season because of erratic rainfall. So it's a very complex picture. And what being part of India Sandwatch has helped us do is what is typically called as both looking in the forest analogy, it's called looking both below the canopy and above the canopy, to get a true sense. And I think that's where we really make our tiny contribution, which is mostly from the ground. And now with a new project on very high resolution satellite imagery and its use in mapping, we hope to also do a little above the canopy, so to say. So I'll hand it over to Tarun to say more about the specific work.
Yeah, hi Siddharth. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, just give me a minute. I'll just share my screen.
Sounds good. Yeah, folks, as while Tarun starts his presentation, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll take them at the end.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a brief overview. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is just a brief overview of what we do at the Wildlife Conservation Trust. And before that, congrats again to Siddharth and his team. So at WCT, we are largely based in Central and North India as of now. And our work, apart from actual on-ground conservation work, we also work with ecosystems and communities and train forest departments, empower, do capacity building. And these are some of the sites we work in across the country. And I'm specifically involved with the Makara program, and most of the work is focused on the Gharial, which is a large fish-eating crocodilian. And these are some of the activities that we undertake as part of this program and the real program that where Nachi is involved. So we look at ecological flows, threats from dams and other such structures. We look at sand mining, illegal fishing, hunting, land use, land cover changes. And these are some of the species that we try and cover through our program. And amongst many of the other threats that are present, sand mining is a major driver of both habitat loss and degradation, especially for species like the gharial and many freshwater species of turtles and ground nesting birds like the Indian skimmer and so on. And why this is such an impact is because sand is a crucial component in their breeding biology. They require these large deposits to nest in. These are the exact sites that are also targeted by sand mining, and that's to do with the quality of sand that's available in these rivers, like Nachi mentioned, especially in the peninsular rivers of India. And these are scenes of what happens to these important nesting grounds. And again, to remind the viewers, this is all inside the National Chambal Sanctuary, which is a protected area. So technically, you cannot be removing sand, or no such activities allowed at all. But given the situation in these places in terms of how far or well the law reaches, these are ground realities that the species have to deal with. And we've seen over the years what's happened to some of these, the best nesting sites in these areas. And I'll just show you a few images of change between over a 5-6 year period. And these sites are entirely lost. So there's no breeding possible at all. And this, from some of our early work, we've seen in terms of how such areas have shrunk in acreage. And we've also monitored nesting fates and so on. And as part of a communication initiative, we've got a very active communications team, and they're constantly putting out material on mining threats and so on. And some of this is thanks to India Sand Watch, because even prior, we've been collecting information on sand mining. And we've not done very much with this information because we didn't think it was of sufficient interest to the general public. And so most of this information stayed with us, got put in our reports, maybe specific submissions to forest departments and so on, but it was never shared with a wider community or with the general public at all. And in some sense, the portal has allowed us to start putting out this sort of information out. And in terms of what these challenges have also driven us to is that we've now started looking at other alternatives in terms of how nesting habitats areas can be secured. So we've been considering activities like bandaling and so on, where we can have dewatered stretches of river flowing again so that we can secure potential nesting grounds in island-like situations. So these are things that we're exploring. And to help us with all of this, we wrote up a grant and we were selected. And this also gives us access to very high quality imagery, 15 and 30 centimeters. And we're quite excited by what that allows us, both in terms of being able to detect what's happening on the ground at scale. Although we observe and record instances of mining during field surveys and so on, we're limited in how much area we can cover in a single season. and access to this sort of imagery increases our area of coverage. And yeah, so we're quite excited about what we can do with this sort of imagery. Yeah, that's about it from me. Over to you, Siddharth.
Thanks, Tarun. I'll now invite my colleague Eshan to take us to the next segment. 1 second.
Thank you so much. We did see a lot of images and we heard about sand mining on the Chambal, and continuing that, I'd like to speak about the action grant that we received in the past year, which will support us to do more work on the Chambal, the Ken, and other rivers on Madhya Pradesh. So in the past couple of years, we have walked along many rivers in Madhya Pradesh, like the Ken, the Betwa, Sindh, and we have also been doing work with our partner, Wildlife Conservation Trust, on the Chambal River. And that made us sort of focus more on the state of Madhya Pradesh. And the project that we're doing now, which is focusing on Madhya Pradesh, is around that only. And what we aim to do through this project is sort of understand what is the sand mining governance landscape currently that is there in Madhya Pradesh, uh, through building networks for collaborations with organizations and people working in MP on rivers, uh, doing workshops, more data sprints, more conversations. We'd like to understand what's happening. We're also trying to co-imagine frameworks and strategies to work around this issue. The first work that we've already done is we conducted a data sprint in May, and we saw more than 30 people who've participated in the sprint collectively archive data of reports of sand mining from Madhya Pradesh. And we saw some very interesting storytelling outputs from the data sprint from the participants, including a very thoughtful blog that a participant wrote. We also saw data visualization exercises that some of the participants put out after the data was archived on SandWatch. Some other work that we have done in the same way is assessing the quality of district survey reports from the state of Madhya Pradesh for the 55 districts that the state has. The district survey report, I think, as we mentioned previously, is a very important document in the sand mining governance process. And to have decent and good quality district survey reports available in the public domain is very critical in terms of accountability. And what we did here was we assessed the availability, status, and readability of all the district survey reports. And we also put out an analysis in the form of a press release. We are also planning to release this as a template for anyone to do assessment for their own states, the district survey report qualities of their own state. The press release that we that came from this assessment talked about that it's quite alarming to see that the 50% districts in the state do not have an approved final version of the district survey report available on their district websites. And we've also had news reports on the publishing agencies like Ground Report and Climate East talk about this. This summer, we also had 4 interns, Ashwin, Kushi, Yogeshwar, and Sunidhi, who also focused on the state of Madhya Pradesh, and they reviewed policy documents. We'll also hear from them now. We had Ashwin, who looked at and reviewed the sand mining policy for the state of Madhya Pradesh. Khushi and Yogeshwar zoomed in into districts and they analyzed the uh, district survey reports along the Ken and the Chambal rivers, respectively. Both had different lenses to do this analysis. Kushi did this analysis from an ecological lens, and Yogeshwar did this from a spatial lens. Sunidhi looked at the whole state of Madhya Pradesh, but with an legal focus in mind, and she reviewed quite a lot of court cases on the sand mining issue from Madhya Pradesh. Yeah, I think at this point I'll ask Ashwin to start us off. All of them will be sharing parts of the work that they did. It's not whole work because they worked a lot for 2 months, but because of the time constraint, we'll ask them to quickly share their work. Yeah, Ashwin, you can start us off.
Ashwin, your slides are on the screen. You can start.
Oh, okay. I was trying to share. Thank you. So hi, I'm Ashwin. I will be talking about the policy part of it. So as you know, sand extraction has seen drastic growth in India parallel in the increase in urbanization, primarily due to its use in construction industry mostly. So where there is a lot of extraction, not only environmental degradation takes place, but like conflicts takes place. Mining conflicts arise due to like weak governance, lack of institutional trust, and limited cooperation across actors and groups. Organized sand mining groups have immense political influence that shapes the politics and the managements of resources. So in this view, reviewing these policies and the rules are a very important step towards that. So the 2017 policy, you can change the slide. So the 2017 policy forms a framework through which the 2019 rules emerge, sort of. So when there are like distinctions, there are some connections between the policy framework and the rules. The three areas of governance which I focused on was the mining permissions and allocations of sand mines. What kind of authorities, what kind of jurisdiction each authority has in allocating mining and the sand mines. What we see is the emerging role of collector, having the decision to say like what kind of mining leases should be allowed, what kind of sand mine should be allowed. You also see by the release of the 2019 rules, you see a degradation of local governance, like how much does a gram panchayat has to say regarding the sand mining permissions. The second aspect of governance was the transportation and storage. When you look at news articles and reports, you can clearly see why this is a very important part, because a lot of illegality happens through transportation and storage. For example, the 2017 policy doesn't mandate any sort of e-transportation passes for the checking of these transported loads. Whereas the later on the 2019 policy does allow for it, but with its specific limitations on monitoring how these things should take place. Environmental considerations, however, take a very back seat in all of these things. Unfortunately, in the 2017 policy framework and in the 2019 rules, which are in effect right now, you don't see much of uh, focus given on the environmental part of it. There are few passing mentions on restrictions. For example, if you look at the 2019 document, there are restrictions on areas, but there is also a provision for those restrictions to be removed by applying for a non-objection certificate. That's how vague and like messy it is. So you can change the slide. So how did I go through these documents and what kind of how were they assessed? What parameters did we look at? First of all, the ecological protections which are given due consideration, are they given due consideration in during mining permissions or transportation, for example? how is technology used for monitoring mechanism? There is a very important use of technology for e-tendering processes and mapping sand mines, but unfortunately not much use of technology to monitor sand mining activities, the illegalities or the environmental degradation, for example. And technology can't, of course, be the solution for everything, because the implementation of this technological infrastructure at grassroots levels in village areas of Madhya Pradesh, uh, how much can they be in place is a question that needs to be asked. The third slide. So what were the key findings, sort of? I would like to summarize it in 2 points, which is symbolic environmentalism. 2017 policy framework, actually, in its beginning, it actually points out one of the priorities is the protection of river ecosystems. But hardly do you see any sort of monitoring mechanism or any sort of free compensation. For example, this courts had ruled that during mining activity, there should be some sort of restoration process that should be taking place. Funds that should be allocated for restoration process. You hardly see any of these mentions in the 2019 rules, for example. So the environmentalism is very symbolic in that sense. What is given priority is towards how all the rules and regulations, if you read the 2019 document, points towards how can you put more steps for inviting more private contractors. The 2017 document rarely it prohibits contracting work, but the 2019 rules sort of focus on that. The second point is the weak monitoring architecture. Penalties are used for revenue generation rather than restricting illegal mining activities. So yeah, that's it to wrap it up quickly. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashwin. Um, all right. I think Khushi is next.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so hi everyone. I analyzed the district survey reports from Ken River Basin of Madhya Pradesh and also tried to understand how well the DSRs could act as an environmentally conscious document and how can it be transformed further to become better directive for complying to the sustainable sand mining. So DSRs has been an important legal document which also specifies where mining can occur, in what quantities it shall occur, and how should mining occur. Next slide, Siddharth. So, for my internship, I used a framework of the legally mandated and personal criteria for the ecological considerations in a DSR, and also assist all the DSRs on the cane for adherence to these criteria. Following which, I also took a step ahead to critically review some of the criteria which are relevant to the environmental impacts. So just to mention here, while all the selected criteria are intended to just ensure sustainable sand mining practices, they do not hold equal importance, and this relative importance can also depend on factors like the scale and the potential of this impact. Yeah, next slide. So the quantitative assessment of my review highlighted five most adhered and violated environmental guidelines, which are mentioned in the table, and also with individual districts showing adherence level in the as shown in the graph. So uh, next slide. Yeah, the qualitative assessments which also emphasized which ones must be prioritized based on its relative importance, and the environmental impacts which are associated if such guidelines are violated, some of which are shown as example, like the specific methods of mining which are used for sand extraction, how does it make a difference, the creation of burns for in-stream mining, how it allows the other environmental impacts like the destruction of habitats for the species, the list of man-made structures on river, which is very essential for doing a cumulative impact assessment study, and also how inadequacy of the restoration plans allows the creation of ecological wastelands in such bits when they are not addressed well. So this review also tries to bring in a shift in perspective for rivers and mining governance, where the framework also proposes moving away from treating a river solely as a resource for extraction and instead just recognizing them as ecological units, which further require explicit management and policy interventions. So, concluding my talk here, I would also like to recognize that relying only on a single document like DSR for environmental considerations is insufficient because the scale and the complexity of the concerns also demand the systematically prepared as well as the independently implemented framework for regulating sand mining on a river in a more sustainable way. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Kushi. Um, I now invite Yogeshwar for their presentation.
Hi. Yeah, so I looked at district survey reports of like districts in Madhya Pradesh through which the Chambal River flows, and which have sanctioned mining, which is 6 out of the 8 districts in Madhya Pradesh that the Chambal flows through. I tried to assess how these DSRs are considerate of the spatial nature of these riverine ecosystems and alongside the environment surrounding them, particularly while assessing the impacts of sand mining on not just the river, but the broader landscape. So you can move on to the next slide. How did I do that? I used a framework derived from various national and state guidelines alongside some personal criteria to assess how well of a job do these DSRs do in taking into account the spatial considerations for both the impact and the impacts of sand mining at both local and watershed scales. Subsequently, I worked on articulating the consequences of the failures on part of DSRs to comply with these criteria in the broader governance scenario for sand mining in Chambal. So that's the next, yeah. So essentially, the review highlighted how DSRs end up functioning as revenue documents, as Ashwin talked about, instead of environmental documents, by firstly ignoring the localized impacts of sand mining and also limiting the assessment of watershed level impacts of sand mining to the district limits. There was also very little consideration for the wider systems that are dependent on the river itself. What came out was the lack of inter-district collaboration and acknowledgement of shared resources that lead to confusion and minimization of the utility of DSRs in regulating sand mining beyond demarcating the legally sanctioned mining area and volumes of extraction that in itself may or may not be sustainable. Yeah, that was it.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. I'll invite Sunidhi to now talk about her study.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So, as part of my internship at India Sandwatch, my research basically looked at judicial environmentalism and reviewed the ways in which courts don't just interpret laws but actively shape environmental governance. So, I focused on Madhya Pradesh court cases between 2013 and 2025, asking to what extent have judicial directions influenced sand mining policy? How have they triggered policy changes? And what are the what triggers the code to be active? If we could move to the next slide. Yeah, so to answer these, I had studied around 50 judicial decisions of the National Green Tribunal, which is the NGT, using doctrinal legal research with purposive sampling. So I tracked different sites of violence using the sample and the framework designed by Siddharth and reviewed how the tribunal framed its different interventions and what triggered them. So the heat map here is one of the analytical lenses being used in the report. One of the key inferences from here is that the clearance site emerges as a primary site of violence from the sample. Now, the reason why it is concerning is that is because the failure to act at the clearance stage sets the stage for violence for other sites. It manifests violences at other sites, and this is very well seen in the case of MS Mincon, where the manifestation of violation at the clearance site reached the Sindh River bank, affecting the river morphology, affecting the river ecology. So, can we move to the next slide? Another lens that we look at in my report is what are the various patterns of intervention that the NGT has employed over the sample. So one striking finding is that joint committees, which are multi-departmental bodies. They are meant to investigate sand mining cases. The use of joint committees has emerged as a primary pattern of judicial intervention. So what is pertinent here to note is that these JCs, joint committees, and the reports are the basis on which the courts predominantly make their judgments. The tribunal set up such committees in over 32 cases out of the 50. But here lies the paradox. These committees are often carry an inherent conflict of interest. Can we move to the next slide? So important to note here is that these JCs are often constituted of members who are themselves respondents in the cases. Hence, they inherently lack neutrality and often their reports are rarely enforceable. In fact, in the case of Rajesh Kumar Singh versus the Union of India, which focused on the sub-districts of Sagra Jhapani and Saliwara at Jabalpur, the court noted that the tribunal itself noted that the reports of these JCs are often contradictory, and it itself quoted that law protectors have become law violators. Now, when I revisited the Sagra Jhapani site in February 2025 through Google Earth, as seen in the snapshot available on the slide, there are trucks and machines still seen operating outside the legal coordinates of the mining site, even after years of tribunal orders. This shows how ad hoc bodies like these joint committees, which are often case specific, do not provide comprehensive institutional memory for efficient monitoring of sand mining sites. This shows how symbolic or weakly enforced interventions undermine the tribunal's intent. These also corroborate the need of having an independent monitoring mechanism as well. So to conclude, the NGT has shaped policy through cancellations, through setting up committees, through stricter sand rules, but orders alone cannot rescue rivers. So in conclusion, yes, judicial environmentalism does open the door, but only law, governance, and community together can save and ensure lasting change. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sunidhi, Ashwin, Khushi, and Yogeshwar for sharing your work. All of them have done really hard work over the past 2 months in summer that they interned with us, and we're happy to see all of their reports. All of them reviewed policy documents, which sometimes gets very intense also to work with, but they very methodically reviewed their respective policy documents. We will soon also be sharing the reports that they've worked on and be putting them out in the public. So thank you so much. Yeah, we can. Continuing talking about the work, so even what the interns presented, that was quite a focus that we did on the state of Madhya Pradesh. We're also hosting and co-organizing a couple of events with our collaborators this weekend in Bhopal. Starting off with a legal data sprint on 22nd. We're hosting a convening on rivers and an open or a general data sprint on the 23rd. And we're also doing a media workshop on Sunday, the 24th of August. If you are in Bhopal, or if you have people, if you know people who are interested in events like this or are working on rivers, please let them know, and please let us know if you know or if you think we can invite someone in Bhopal. So yeah. We'll also be sharing some of the links in chat to register for these events. The one of the convening that we're doing this Saturday is one of the events, but in the past year we've also done more convenings and more experiments to build networks, to explore storytelling, and have different sorts of outputs out there. And we've done a lot of those with Agami, and I'll invite Aditi here to share some of the work that we've done together.
Thanks, Aishani. Really glad to be here and see the incredible work that's happened over the last year at India Sandwatch. I think just maybe a quick introduction to Agami. We are a not-for-profit that works in the domain of law and justice, and our primary role is that of a field catalyzer, where I think Sunidhi had mentioned that orders or judicial environmentalism alone is not enough, that you need multiple different factors and actors coming together to really create the snowball effect and the change that we hope to see. I think a large part of our work is that creating enabling conditions for a variety of actors and ecosystem players to come on board and work together to bridge the access to justice gap. Over the last year, I think I'm going to begin by talking about the OpenAI Makerspace residency. So let me share screen. Give me a minute.
While Aditi's presentation comes up, just mentioning that I've put the links to the events in Bhopal in the chat. If anybody is interested in joining or sharing with anybody in Bhopal, please you take those links, share it with them, or email us and we'll send these to you later as well. Back to you, Aditi.
Thanks, Sid. So the OpenAI Makerspace residency brought together multiple different stakeholders to address one interconnected larger umbrella problem statement. This problem statement was around increasing the effectiveness and efficiency of paralegals in the country. I think to understand paralegals, a good analogy is an ASHA worker for the legal space or an extension worker for the agricultural space. They really function as a bridge between the legal system and communities on ground, and more often than not, also perform many of the functions of a lawyer. The residency was designed in 3 working groups. We were working group 2, where we addressed a specific question within this broader umbrella problem statement. This was how might we design tools or platforms that help paralegals efficiently query and retrieve comprehensive environlegal data. I think many of you would understand the challenges of environlegal data. It's disaggregated. Often government portals that host this data are unreliable or difficult to access. Both environmental and legal data separately are very jargon heavy. There's a whole lot of demystification that's needed to be able to make this data usable. And due to this complexity, often the pipeline of action that a paralegal can take is obscure. I think it needs a fair amount of guidance and support, and so on and so forth. I think we deconstructed a whole lot of these challenges of working with this data set, and the group that came together to address this were 4 partner organizations: Foundation for Ecological Security, Veditum Legal Dictionary, Center for Social Justice, and Ulloy. Sorry, 5 of us, along with technology enablers. And I should have perhaps mentioned this, but the idea of the residency is essentially to bring together organizations or individuals working on issues on the ground with tech experts who are much more acquainted with problem solving using technology, and government bodies who could then perhaps see how the ideas and the prototypes that come up could be plugged into existing systems. So the flow of the 3-day in-person workshop in Kochi was a little bit of this. One is deconstructing the problem statement, both, I think, all the stakeholders understanding really what is at the heart of the issue, identifying a focus area, rapid prototyping, and eventually the demonstration. We eventually worked on, in fact, sand mining as the case study, and eventually created a prototype of a chat-based tool that enables the user to enter the coordinates and plot a polygon that is then superimposed on what we've been talking about in previous slides, the district survey report information that offers a sense of what is the permissible area within which mining can take place, and essentially gives you like a layered image that superimposes these multiple pieces or data sets and can act as evidence. So I think what was fun was being able to make it a lot more user-friendly. I think just the interface of a chat allows for breaking down, I think, sometimes what exists as barriers towards accessing this information and participating and engaging with it. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for us was for students and especially people from the tech space to be able to kind of understand the nuances of the problem, not just sand mining as an issue, but also the issues with availability and accessibility of data. That was one. And I think for a lot of lawyers on the team, what was very interesting to know was just this ability to be able to kind of do, think, do versus think, do, think. So quickly kind of pivoting and materializing ideas and reducing that time in which that happens was, I think, just that interesting exchange of energy that happened. What emerged from this was a seed of an idea called the Data Liberation Project that Akshay and Sid kind of conceptualized. And again, this built on some of the gaps that we identified in the process of building the prototype. And these are things that just by virtue of the work that they've been doing on building the platform have also identified over the last few years, which is that there is an inadequacy of comprehensive data sets that are easy to retrieve, that are machine readable, that are queryable. And the intent really was to kind of build out a data set of minutes of meetings of EIA and EAC meetings. But yeah, I think these were some of just the offshoots that we hope that a space like a residency could enable. Moving on, Agami, along with many other partners, hosts the Justice Maker Mela, which is an annual year-end convening where multiple different actors from the justice system kind of gather for a 2-day event, where the idea really is to see what's the spectrum and the length and breadth of different interventions, different approaches to effectuating justice, to accessing justice, to delivering rights and entitlements, to schemes, different interpretations of justice as well. And this is not just through formal legal mechanisms, but also through traditional knowledge systems, through community-based and grassroots movements and mechanisms that have kind of grown and developed over time through communities' involvement in issues. And I think this is a space that again brings together many different actors who are looking at the justice system or just justice in very different ways. There are 2 sessions that I think we co-organized many sessions, but there are 2 that I'm going to focus on for this call. One is the mining data party. Both Sid and Ashani have spoken about data sprints, and I think what was interesting was how data sprints are a great way to kind of help people understand, of course, the subject of sand mining, but also create a participatory method of engagement. I think there's also something about like actioning intent, which happens quite beautifully. It also brings in a little bit of technology, a little bit of like facts, a little bit of community engagement. There's a reinforcement of the sense of purpose. I've been myself part of one, so can definitely speak to that feeling. And I think what it did do was introduce the larger community to this method of engaging, which is definitely very popular with students. So we had 2 mining data parties, both on day 1 and day 2. The other was the innovation pop-up. The innovation pop-up is essentially a collection of 20 different ideas in the field of justice that are really pushing the boundaries of the field. And I think this is the second time Veditum has been a part of it, and heard a lot of like interest and excitement, especially from many judges and people in institutions who see the inherent value of a platform like India Sandwatch that enables so many different actors to use data in effective ways. I think the pop-up also allowed for people to get a sense of the many different things Veditum is working on. There was a bit on, like, of course, the machine learning component that our friends at UC Berkeley presented, but the other is artifact that Kabini Amin, who's not on this call, she was there on last year's call. She's an artist whom we worked with to visualize the journey of India Sandwatch as an idea. And I think for us at Agami, it's really interesting because change making has never been a linear process. It has like I think this is very on the nose, but it is very, very much like a river with its many twists and turns. And I think we really enjoyed the process of kind of breaking it down and making visible almost like the behind the scenes of how ideas come together and eventually materialize through this scroll. The scroll was a part of, I think, a larger storytelling effort that Sachin, one of my colleagues, and I had worked on, where again, what we tried to do was really try and demonstrate through the work and the many initiatives that we done, why this sort of a multi-pronged effort is important. The narrative building, the kind of the importance of integrating platforms and technology, and the very, very important role of community around growing around issues. And yeah, I think the scroll became like one of the components of this larger narrative effort. But yeah, I think this is about it from my end.
Thanks so much, Aditi. I don't think I can emphasize enough on how much I have learned from partners and friends like Agami, like Akshay, on the power of convening, on the power of holding space, and sometimes forcefully holding space for an imagination to almost get triggered by itself. And we see it again and again when we do the work at India Sandwatch, where we have, 1 second, we have really struggled to make this imagination palpable to a lot of people within the environmental sector. And we've had to really hold tight for these 2 to 3 years since we've been working on India Sandwatch. Especially with legacy organizations, we've struggled a lot, and which is why partners like Wildlife Conservation Trusts just give that fresh breath of air to us, where even as a legacy organization, folks like Nachi and Tarun have the openness to approach a new, like embrace a new approach, like what we are trying to do at India Sandwatch. And so I'm taking a lot away from this method of convening, method of holding space. And it's sometimes very dirty and rough, even with India Sandwatch, but definitely learning a lot and taking from it. Uh, just towards the end of today's session of where we are, just wanted to look back at some of the future plans that we had shared last year in the 1 year review of India Sandwatch, where we said we're going to expand the data archive, we're going to make the archive more accessible, we're going to improve the actionable through toolkits. We'll obviously continue working with partners collectively. And the fact that this challenge of scale and data availability is something that remains. I'm actually very happy that we are doing these year-on-year reviews where we are actually seeing that, yes, we are expanding the data archive, You saw today earlier when Akshay talked about making accessibility through language, through analytics for those who may not be able to do data analytics themselves, on how that is made accessible. The assessment methodology that Eshani showed, we are in the process of converting that into a sort of a toolkit that anybody can apply in their contexts, and how do we use that to improve action. And as you've seen, we continue working with partners and new partners. For example, Sankalp here is here with us today from Vartavaran and Awaz Leadership Labs, who we are now doing more work with. And probably next year in the review, you'll hear from Sankalp and Rohit also when we talk about the many explorations that we do together in the coming year. Some future plans that I want to share with you, that part of which we've already shared, is that we will continue to make our work accessible in a multilingual format. We're starting with a bilingual approach where Hindi as a language and the areas that we are focusing on is important. So we're focusing and starting with Hindi. Like I said, we are making more tutorials and playbooks available for everyone to use. And excited to see how others take it. Like, for example, the Habitat Trust grant that we have and the focus that we're doing with MP, there's a culmination of many imaginations that's coming together and many approaches that is coming together. Now that playbook is available. So if you want to focus on your state with that same playbook, we will share the playbook as is with you, which has failures, successes, all of it to implement in your own state. And there's one other thing that we've been thinking of for a while, that keeping in tradition with a lot of how ownership is built at local level. Eventually, and this has always been a stand that we've taken at India Sandwatch, that we are not solving all the problems. We are building some tools to solve problems, but it always ends up being the need for ownership at local level, which takes the problems, takes the tools and solves it. And we are hoping to play the role of that accessory which helps people solve these problems. So we thought, why not create a network of champions along rivers who are interested in river protection. So if there is a river that you love, and you may be here on the Zoom call, you may be listening to this later on as a recording on YouTube. If you want to take ownership of a river that you love, whether you are next to that river or not, whether you are a lawyer, whether you are a conservationist, whether you are a storyteller, uh, or you may be a judge, you may be a bureaucrat, doesn't matter. You can take ownership, and we can work with you to build an idea around that river, which at least can help protect that river from the issue of sand mining, or at least we can together build a robust base of information and tools that can be used to protect that river from illegal and destructive sand mining. So the email address is on the screen, sandwatch@veditum.org. Write to us with a subject of Sandwatch Champions for Rivers. And why not become that champion for the river that you love and work with us? We'll give you the support that we can and make that protection possible for the river that you like. Because uh, there's this thing where a lot of people who are involved in destruction, they have their own incentives. We also have our own incentives for protection. And I think the biggest driver for that, biggest incentive amongst all of that is love. So why don't you become a champion for the thing that you love, and you make that change happen? So you write to us, we'll work together to make something happen. We will, with that, just put out some invitations for you to get involved with us. If you're not already registered on India Sandwatch, create an account right now. We put the link again in the chat. If you're watching this later, the link is in the description of the video. Join our future sprints, subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated, collaborate with us if you're an organization or if you are an individual. We are currently running our fundraiser. Please contribute to the fundraiser that's going on right now. We can put a chat to that, link to that in the chat as well. Or if you're an organization, come on board as an institutional donor. With that, I'll pause. This was a space that we had created for our own reflections in this 1 year. Inviting you to ask some questions as we close out over the next 15 to 20 minutes this particular session. But would really love to hear from more of you on what you thought about what you saw, and what are the questions that you are holding in your head. Yeah, inviting any questions from folks here. Just unmute and share, and we can just do a round of reflection amongst us. Thank you. Anyone? You can just unmute and talk.
Okay, I will go first as I saw this webinar pretty late, or just if today's Monday, like 3-4 days ago in the last week, and registered for it through the Yeti mailing list. And even though I've done my schooling in India, like till high school till 12th, and I've gone outside to do my bachelor in environmental science from Berkeley University in research. And I've come back recently. We're now working as a research intern, especially in the sustainable food system vertical at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, CEW, which is again a non-profit and a climate think tank trying to shift policy changes in India and across different sectors. You gave a very insightful presentation, especially for the mining part, because actually water has been one of my prime areas of interest. And of course, thanks for all the multidisciplinary views of your work of your interns. So it was great hearing all this, and look forward to future chances of working together or anything else. We'll try to keep in touch.
Thanks, Anshu. Would anybody else like to share?
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm from Karnataka actually, and I wanted to ask, like, is there a reason why Madhya Pradesh is heavily focused in this amazing work that you're doing?
Yeah, so as part of the Moving Upstream program that we have and the fellowship, we've actually walked multiple rivers of Madhya Pradesh, and we have a lot of on-ground experience with MP. And as we were building the database on India Sandwatch, what also became very apparent, and there's also a language bias that's resulted in a lot more reports from North India getting uploaded to the platform, which is why we also now have data sprints that are region focused so that we can update data from other parts of India as well. But combination of our experience on ground and learnings from the state of Madhya Pradesh, plus the data on the India Sandwatch platform, pairing with MP really standing out as a state which has a lot of sand mining happening, a lot of reports from there, resulted in us saying, okay, let's focus on this. But the idea is that we're not going to now say we're also going to do another version in Karnataka. No, you will do that version in Karnataka and we will assist you in doing it. Right? That's the idea.
I really get that point, because like first time I got to know about you guys, I just like went to a website and then was checking. There were like many cases in Madhya Pradesh, and then like some cases in also West Bengal, and then like the rest of the India was like, is it? I mean, I know for a fact that there is a lot of illegal sand mining happens in my village, for example. So I mean, I would be happy to like contribute as much as I can, and yeah, I'm looking. I will write you guys, and yeah, I would be happy to get some assistance from you.
Yeah. If you have observed sand mining activity where you are on a river, you should upload mining observations to the India Sandwatch platform. And if you are, and we know that this is a case for a lot of people, that they are worried about safety, there's also now a way to anonymously add data onto the India Sandwatch platform where you may have observed sand mining activity on a river on ground. So check out the platform. We will anyway send resources after the session in a couple of days. But yeah, we'll be in touch.
No, I would love to upload pictures, but I'm not in India right now. But yeah, I would be happy to like look for data and try to upload something like that.
Amazing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else would like to share?
Yeah, can I say something?
Yes, Nachi.
Yeah, so again, a wonderful meeting today. It was 2 hours, but they just, went like a breeze. It was very nice. I just want to share a few reflections on data. This is the age of data. This is not just the age of data, but it's the age of dashboards, portals. Every grant application that either I am writing or I'm reviewing is about, we'll make a portal, right? So what is adequate? What is transparent? That is, of course, important. And one part of the argument is, which I also wrote briefly in the chat, I just thought I should elaborate a bit more on. One part of that is not spoken of much is salience. What is the data that is going to really be the leverage towards change in policy, towards even change in outlook? You look at, well, take the stray dog, the free-ranging dog ruling, what that has been passed. Now, there are all kinds of sites, there are multiple experts, but when you look at who is saying what exactly, and depending on, of course, your concern, your normative investment in the problem, that is, on that day, by that judge, or for that bench, that becomes important. So, the space that we all, most of us are engaging with on a day-to-day basis, the social, environmental, ecological, conservation, sustainability, justice space, broadly defined, is always going to be a personal, personally understood space. And I think it's, it may sound tangential or slightly off what we were discussing, but we are in a nation of, where most people choose to say, so what, and move on, right? So I really believe that, and I also said that when I spoke briefly, was that a platform like India Sandwatch has achieved, rather than saying this is enough and now we are going to go in with it. What is amazing is the iterated development of the platform. One, because I've been associated with it from not exactly from the beginning, but just after. And that process itself, making the process personal to its users has been a very important step. Why I emphasize this is it has been a learning for us also, being part of this, that yes, there is data out there, there are data analysts, there are AI experts, tools, etc. They go in, they say, okay, now I have so much data, I'll write a paper, this will do something, But when you upload a report, it's not, your name probably is not even coming there. But that's not the point. The point is you are contributing, and that is one aspect of it. So a space that is inherently going to be seen, viewed differently by different, not even stakeholders, different people who can have an opinion, will look at it more personally. And I think one leverage point there has been that lawyers actually approaching, a website, collection like this and saying, we want to use this, because they found something there which was not in the dry format of just evidence, but something more. And this is important because, like somebody was saying, it was still accepted as evidence. Why? Because it's a media platform, in a way. But it's not just a media platform, because it's pooling district survey reports, it's pooling government records, it's pooling news reports and presenting them in a certain structure with citizen participation in uploading the data. That is what makes it more than a media platform. Otherwise, we know media evidence is not always accepted, right? And in the present day of media. So anyway, just to drive home my point is, this is something that we all, I think, should, whenever we, talk about India Sandwich outside, I think this is a key point which I feel sets it apart from many other initiatives. And I do happen to be a part of quite a few. So, I think I just wanted to mention that here for all of us to think about, nothing else. Thank you.
Thanks, Nachi. And before next person speaks, I have two things that I wanted to share. The second of which is that please hang on till the end so that we can take a snapshot of everyone here on the call. So maybe next 5-7 minutes, not too much. We'll not hold you too much. The second thing is, in fact, Akshay and I co-imagined India Sandwatch somewhere around 2018, March 2018, probably around the 20th of March, 17th, 18th March, something around that. It's got triggered from a Twitter, a tweet that I had made and Akshay and I talked. And, we actually went into this zone of saying, let's just do machine learning and identify where mining is happening. And we went down that road. And after one point, because of many different kinds of setbacks, we eventually said, but the availability of mining observation is not what is not letting action happen. It's the remaining part of the puzzle is why action is not happening. So then we set out to build the remaining part of the puzzle, which is India Sandwatch, along with the mining observation bit. And now with our partners, we are still doing the machine learning part. But I just wanted to say that, Nashi, what you said about, oh, ek baar mein paper likh dete hain, ek baar mein we'll, just make this model and this will work. But that information can only work when with the context and when the context is there. So just wanted to sort of pick on that, and obviously the iterative part, absolutely agreed, and strong belief.
One more thing I'll just add. The data is not even the problem, in the sense that sure, you need the data. But chalo, ho gaya. So we have 100% perfect, clean data. It will mean nothing if there are no people. If we don't have this community, what Sid talked about convening, right? And I think Nachiket also sort of mentioned it in his thing about, ki data to theek hai. Like there is always going to be a need for more data. It's like being thirsty in the desert, right? Like you just always need more data, right? But I think what we need are people. Like what Sid's invitation at the end is that the India Sandwich is so much more than data and platform. It is methods. It is just being there, being consistently showing up so that people like you can kind of also say that, hey, can I do this in my backyard? Whatever that backyard might be, whatever the size of that backyard is, right? It could be a 500-meter stretch of the closest, stream that is close to your home or where you grew up, or it could be a whole tributary, it could be a whole basin, whatever you define as your backyard. And I think that invitation and that community is what is going to make the difference. Not the data is only one of the tiny inputs into that whole process, and people are going to be the differentiator, not the data.
And thanks, Akshay. We have time for 2 more comments before we close. Just want to be mindful of everybody's time. So any last 2 comments anybody wants to share?
Can I say
Yeah.
something? Yeah. Yeah. So I think after what has been said, my point in the beginning that I was talking a little bit about, it was the community and everything that we're building, that policy, when it comes to policy advocacy and using legal data for that, it's still a new emerging field. And India Sandwatch has given a lot of catalysm to people who are looking to experiment with this, such as myself when I started off. So what I wanted to say is, like, in terms of building the capacity, we can also think of how to synthesize a data analytical output, right? And that would involve, like, presenting in law, there's a practice of marshalling cases. So we have all the cases now after like 50 to 100 cases have been collected. There's a jurisprudence that emerges, and it is a job of somebody who is involved with this system. And I would be really happy if, we could all collaborate to discuss how the jurisprudence is emerging in this, in legal sense. Like there's a case law and there's a rationale that the courts are adopting. Unfortunately, as our intern said, it happens to be revenue in many cases. And then the second thing I wanted to say was that our data is at times very diverse. So having like a dictionary or like a sort of like a list of, I worked with ontologies for a while before this, and I found that immensely helpful for structuring the sort of like work that the data represents. So the data points that are covered. so that if somebody looking at mining observations by machine, they know what made it classify as that and what it's linked to in the news report, or where the definition is. That I think Judicial Data Collaborative is doing a good job at this, and Wikidata does a good job at this, like making like a semantic web sort of reference there. But yeah, I think I made my point. I don't want to say more.
So, thanks, Uncle. And agreed. I think the coming together and having some sort of commonality is very important for action to happen. Even if it's not perfect, doesn't matter. But the commonality as a stream is very essential. One last 1 minute comment if anybody has. Otherwise, then we'll close and move from this session. Anybody quickly unmute and speak?
One quick point, Siddharth.
Um,
Yeah, first, again, congrats to you both. Like everyone said, what this has become now and today's session, both wonderful. I want to drive home the point of collating this data again. I've been guilty of not doing it myself. But, and this is somebody Siddharth knows, Sahil, who wrote that wonderful article in the Hindu after observing sand mining in the Chambal. Very surprisingly, the district administration took note of that report and issued a suo motu notice to all the officers, all the administrative officers across departments to take action. It went to the NGT. And so we thought that was the end of it. We were just happy that the admin took note of it. But as a trickle-down effect, the current superintendent of police in Dholpur, he's been very proactive in clamping down on mining. And after almost a decade, there are at least a couple of sites where, because there hasn't been mining for a long time, those sites were fairly undisturbed. And after almost a decade, we've had turtle and gharial nesting in those sites. And I'd like to think that these sorts of efforts will drive home the point and allow these sorts of small recoveries. There might be small victories, but these are, yeah, they're evident. We're hoping for many more.
Awesome. What a positive point to wrap up today's session. Thanks so much for sharing that, Tarun. And thank you, everybody, for being here, spending this time with us. I know a weekday, Monday evening is not easy to take time out on. Those of our friends who had to drop off earlier, thanks to all of them as well. But before we drop off, we'll take a photo. So if you can switch on your videos for like a minute, that will be great. But stay involved. You will get an email with us with details on what actions you can take. Join us for future sprints. Join us for events that we do on ground. And if I'm missing anything, team, please put it on the chat. Obviously, if whenever you're watching this, please do contribute in helping run initiatives like this, including the fundraiser that we're running right now. And yeah, I think that's about it for today. Okay, just quickly checking with Ashwin, Krushi, Sumit, Vineet, Anishman, and Nikhil. Are you able to switch on your cameras? Just for a minute, we'll take a group selfie, group photo, and then we'll get off call. Okay, all right. So for everybody who's here, say cheese.
Cheese.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.